Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intentional Investor. It's officially July, which means it's time for another monthly dividend update. This month my portfolio generated $1,177.68 in dividend income. I'll show you exactly where that money came from, but today I also want to introduce what I consider to be the first, and probably the most important, pillar of my entire financial system. Now, I'll be honest. This is probably going to be the most boring part of the system for a lot of people. It's not a secret ETF, it's a budget, but here's what I believe. If you never copy another part of my investing strategy, but you leave this video and start using a budget, then this video will have been worth making. Because I honestly believe budgeting has improved my financial life more than any individual investment ever has. So let's start with the June results. Here's the breakdown for June. MLPI, $255.53. BTCI, $234.27. IWMI, $203.50. QQQI, $181.75. HOOW, $166.46. TOPW, $69.29. SPYI, $34.76. IAUI, $27.45. NEHI, $2.75. JEPQ, $1.92. That brings my total dividend income for June to $1,177.68. Now that you've seen the results, I want to show you what I think is actually the most important part of this entire channel. It starts with a budget. My budgeting process is actually very simple. At the beginning of every month, I list every source of income I expect to receive. For me, that's primarily my W-2 income. Then I list every expense I expect to have during the month. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, transportation, phone, internet, entertainment, everything gets its own category. Personally, I use the EveryDollar budgeting app from Ramsey. I'm not sponsored by them. I simply think it's one of the easiest budgeting apps available. The reason I like it is because it encourages you to assign every dollar a purpose before you spend it. I love that idea. Every dollar should have a job. When I finish my budget, I know exactly where my money is going before the month even starts. More importantly, I know that every one of my essential expenses is covered by my W-2 income. That gives me tremendous peace of mind. I'm not wondering if I'll have enough money to pay the mortgage. I'm not hoping everything works out. I already know it's covered. And once I have that confidence, I can focus on investing. The next part of my system is something that's specific to the way I manage my finances. One of the first goals I had was building my brokerage account to at least $2,000. This is not an emergency fund. The reason for the $2,000 is that my brokerage requires a minimum account value before margin borrowing becomes available. Once I reached that point, the next part of my system became possible. Here's an example. Let's say I receive a $3,000 paycheck. Instead of leaving that money in my checking account, I transfer the entire paycheck into my brokerage account and invest it in the ETFs I'm buying. Those ETFs are marginable assets. Most of the NEOS ETFs I own have about a 25% maintenance requirement, which means roughly 75% of their value is available to borrow against. If I only invested that $3,000 paycheck, I wouldn't immediately be able to borrow the entire $3,000 because part of the investment has to remain in the account to satisfy the maintenance requirement. That's why the original $2,000 is important. It provides enough equity that, after investing my paycheck, I can generally borrow against essentially the full amount of that paycheck if I need it for my monthly expenses. So instead of my paycheck sitting in a checking account earning almost nothing, it's invested in my portfolio while still being available through margin as part of my personal cash flow system. I'm not borrowing money because I can't afford my bills. My budget comes first. My W-2 income covers my living expenses. Margin is simply a tool I use to manage cash flow while keeping my paycheck invested. Without a budget, I would never be comfortable using margin. The budget is the foundation. Everything else is built on top of it. In future videos, I'll continue explaining the rest of my financial system, why I chose the ETFs I own, how I think about leverage, taxes, and the other pieces that work together. But it all starts here, with a simple budget, because in my opinion, financial freedom doesn't begin with your first investment. It begins with your first intentional budget.